Hello, welcome, friends. Thank you for joining us. My name is Rabbi Jonathan Falco, and I'm joined here with Rabbi Bennett Miller. And today we're going to be discussing what the deeper meaning of the sound of the shofar is and what its implications are for our people and our connection to one another as Jews within the wider Jewish community and between each other. So um, I gave a sermon the Friday before Rosh Hashanah that was on September 19th of this year in 2025. And I opened with the story of my family dog when I was growing up, and he made this very peculiar sound. He didn't really have a bark. He chirped. So anytime he wanted attention or anyone else's food other than his own, he didn't bark. He would just sit and chirp, and it was this very unique kind of sound that we became beloved in our family, as annoying as it sometimes was when we had to surrender our own plates and bowls to him to make it stop. But it really resonated with our family, and that became kind of a sound for us, especially in his memory. And so um, it it brings to mind this idea of family sounds, sounds that connect us to memory and to one another. And that's also what um, one of the functions of the shofar is too, that the shofar being the collective sound of Jewish belonging, you might say. We know that the shofar has its own purposes to call us to repentance and for its usage across generations. And today, I want us to explore how the sound of the shofar connects us to God and calls us to repentance. But beyond that, it also connects the Jewish community to each other, that is, across continents and generations on both an individual and a communal level. So, like I said, I'm joined here with Rabbi Bennett Miller. And Rabbi Miller is the Rabbi Emeritus of Anshe Emeth Memorial Temple in New Brunswick, and he's a lifelong leader in support of Jewish peoplehood and engagement with Israel. He's a mentor, a teacher, and I'm very grateful for his original nomination of me for the Amplify Israel Fellowship through Stephen Wise Free Synagogue, which is the impetus for this podcast and project. So thank you for joining us, Rabbi Miller.
Thank you, Rabbi Falco. It's a true honor to be with you and to share in this opportunity for conversation about the shofar, about Jewish peoplehood, and what all of that means for us, especially in the world that we're living in right now.
Yes, absolutely. And it is, there's no better time. It's always a good time to talk about Jewish peoplehood and belonging, but especially in times like today, it perhaps is more important and relevant than ever. So I want to start by talking about the shofar as a sound of belonging and as kind of a symbol of communal connection and Jewish identity. What do you think about what it's about sound rather than sight or text that really evokes in such a powerful way our tradition that evokes belonging in our tradition rather than just what we see, symbols that we see, that which is around our sanctuaries and things like that. This in particular makes a sound that we know is relevant for a particular time of year, especially specifically the high holidays, but it's a piercing sound that evokes a lot within us and for us as Jews. So I was wondering what some of your thoughts are about that particular element of sound here.
Well, as you know, the shofar is not a horn. Okay, and horns are used in various people's traditions to sound alarm, to sound for victory. But the shofar has a very different sound, and it was, in a sense, it was picked for the Jewish people by God. Okay, and it was picked by the Jewish people for a very different purpose, and that purpose was to recognize that the world as we see it was to be different than the way in which we had seen it in the past. Meaning, God calls Abraham as you know, the story, to take his son Isaac, take him up to Mount Moriah and to sacrifice him there. That's what people did when they had their first child, sacrifice him, give him back to God, because now it means you can have more, that you're capable of having children. Um, and, and Abraham does as he is called upon to do. By the way, I've always had a problem with Abraham because of that. Why didn't he say no? I'm not willing to sacrifice my children for your ego, so to speak.
Right.
Okay, but nevertheless, that was the test that God put Abraham to, and in that sense, Abraham passed the test, as the, if you will, as the literal text goes. My commentary is subliteral. Okay, but
Sure.
he passes the test, and then God says, "Okay, you passed the test, but the truth is, that's not what I want you to do. I don't want you to do what everyone else does. I want you to see the world differently, um, and the sacrifice that I want you to make is a sacrifice of pursuing justice, of of um, of doing, of not only doing what's right, but also creating a world that is worthy of my presence." Um, and so, in a sense, Abraham says, "Then, how am I going to still fulfill the sacrifice?"
Right.
Okay, so that we'll put the ram in place of your child, but the ram's horn, the shofar, will now become a symbol of the agony, that you would have felt had you followed through, and B, of the obligation. Okay, and I mean this in a very positive way, the obligation to do what's not normal,
Mm.
the obligation to say no when everyone else says yes,
Right.
the obligation that should be um, painful to you because the other is so easy. By the way, this past Shabbat, I was at a No Kings rally in Morristown, New Jersey,
Sure.
and it was my second such rally, and I brought my 12-year-old grandson with me. I wanted him to hear the sounds of the people. Okay,
Mm.
the sound, people were saying things like "No kings," okay, "Democracy for all." Okay, um, by the way, there were only white people there. Somebody standing next to me said, "How come there aren't any black and Hispanic people here?" I simply turned to him and I said, "They're afraid. That's why they're not here. They're afraid to be able to be here." I thought to myself, but I'm here because I'm obligated to be here,
Right.
because that sound of the shofar is ringing in my ears.
Mm.
You don't have a choice. Okay. Once you hear the sound of the shofar, of this wailing of the injustice that goes on in the world, of um, the lack of raising up all of humanity, it becomes a sound that not only can you not stand to hear, but also that when you hear it, you you can't help but do anything but feel obligated to act on it.
So that is to say that the shofar as a unique symbol of a uniquely Jewish symbol, because through our tradition and through the binding of Isaac, as you just described so beautifully, that it carries with it a sense of collective responsibility for us as a people, and that if we talk about that which is unique, not just to the sound, but also a visceral reminder of that obligation that does connect all of us to one another and to our greater purpose, which, as you already articulated, is to create a world that is worth living in and building upon. Um, so then, this idea of a sound that evokes our our call to do that which is hard and perhaps not what the rest of society or what the easy thing to do would be, right? Sometimes that often means staying silent as opposed to going out there and attending such a protest and rally to bring that voice and representation that is as you said, manifest through the call of the shofar. How do we think that, or do you think that that sound um, is a universal kind of unifier then for Kalal Yisrael today? That is the Jewish collective, and um, because they're current affairs aside, that this idea of the traditional idea of the sound of the shofar, like as a piercing sound that calls us to look within ourselves and to repair our relationships between us and God and us to one another, and how we're going to do differently and better in the year to come. Is that does that translate to this kind of modern understanding of how we enact that in the world today? And does that apply across the entire Jewish collective?
So I want to share with you a story.
Please.
In 1978, I was invited to be a part of a group of 12, as it turned out, 12 young men from what today is the Jewish Federation world, but in those days from United Jewish Appeal, to go to Romania during Hanukkah. And I did, and every day we visited small communities, Stedlach. In one of them, and remember, 1978, Romania was different than it is today. The lights weren't
Right.
turned on. It was under
Right.
communist rule, and we were never left alone. We were the equivalent, the Romanian equivalent of the KGB, followed
Right.
us wherever we went.
As an escort, then, yes.
Of sorts, of sorts. We we went into one small shul right on the border between Romania and the Soviet Union, and we were with the entire Jewish community, maybe 30 people that were there, and we did what Jews do during Hanukkah. Okay, we and they gave out gifts to all the kids. We had the kids sing some songs. We lit the Chanukiah, and then we ate. Okay, and while we were sitting and eating, an older man comes over to me, and he hands me a bag, and he says to me, "Take this out of Romania. You'll know what to do with it, because we can't do it here." Thank you very much. And I put the bag in with my stuff, and I get back to the hotel, and I was convinced the room was completely bugged, maybe even with cameras. So I went into the shower. I literally wrapped myself inside of the shower curtain. Okay. And I opened the bag, and it was a shofar.
Wow.
Small shofar, about this big. It's a shofar.
Wow.
And I thought to myself, he can't use it here because that sound would be too penetrating. And that's why it's not allowed.
Mm.
But his telling me to take it and to use it because I'll know what to do with it meant that he understood that he and I and Jews all over the world were connected. We understood its meaning and its purpose and the obligation to hear it, not to blow it, but to hear it.
Right.
Okay. So ever since, I've used that shofar
Wow. That
to
is
be able to do it.
a beautiful, beautiful story and fascinating, especially I'm not sure how many people have gone through such an experience to just to get a glimpse of what it means to cherish that symbol for us and from our the freedoms we enjoy here in the United States to a country of repression. And for that still to have been recognized and held on to and again treasured by the Jewish community speaks exactly to that understanding of the shofar and the sound and what the implications of that sound are for the Jewish community and the obligations that are upon us when we hear it and
Yeah.
that the fact that it is or it was a danger for them and even for you to be in possession of it as in having received it as a gift to bring back is not just a relic of a time that had since passed, but is really an enduring symbol of that call that we referenced earlier to be there with one another, whether it be physically, which you had the opportunity to do in celebrating Hanukkah with them, but also in a
Yep.
spiritual sense. That is, I'm sure, comes to mind each time that you sound it. Um,
Without a doubt.
so then the fact that you speak about this experience literally across continents, right? That there's this connection that we share regardless of space. But the point that you raised that it's not just the commandment is to hear the sound of the shofar and to listen to it not just with our ears but in our hearts really and to embody what the call is meant for us in a kind of wider sense. Do you feel as though the Jewish people are still listening to one another across our divides?
Well, the simple answer is yes. Um, and certainly evidence of that is um, is how we have both the good and the not so good of how we have reacted to October the 7th.
Right.
The good is that in many profound ways, um, both Jews and 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 organized communities, in particular synagogues, um, have uh, made sure that they remain connected with the hostages and the families of the hostages during this entire time. Um, and they have, like the shofar, they have expressed it symbolically, wearing as I do. I won't take this off until the last hostage comes home. Okay,
Right.
a yellow ribbon, um, prayers for the hostages in synagogues, putting a photograph of a hostage on one of the seats on the bima as a place of honor.
Right.
Um, uh, uh, Sometimes even more publicly, having symbols out in front of the synagogue buildings or in front of people's homes, declaring, bring them home.
Right.
Um, I think in some ways that's because they all heard the sound of the shofar.
Mm.
Okay. It's because the shofar doesn't make a call to do one simple thing. The shofar makes a call to reawaken us from our sleep. You talked about that in your sermon, okay, that you shared with me. Um, it calls upon us to break from our habits, okay? And it also calls upon us to gather together like an army. That's the teruah sound, okay,
Right.
like an army ready to take on any of the adversaries that are in front of us. Now, for the most part over our history, it wasn't military adversaries. We weren't a nation state, okay? Um, except in a few different historical times, right now being one of them. But we did have adversaries. And some of those adversaries were emotional adversaries. Some of them were also physical adversaries. So the shofar is intended to evoke all of that, and as a result, um, that sound becomes so incredibly penetrating. For what it's worth, in the synagogue where I served for 44 years, um, when I got there, we had a custom of two shofar blowers, one who would be on the bima and one who would be in the balcony. Okay? And the rabbi would call out the tekiah and the guy, and and they were always they were high school kids. Okay, they're now in the ones who did it when I first arrived are now in their mid 60s. Okay, um, and and I said to the leadership here, I'd like to expand that. Let's have 5 or 6 shofar blowers strategically placed throughout the congregation. They said, well, why? And I said, well, first of all, because I want to be able to give our young people the opportunity to both hear it and also to be the ones who made the sound.
Mm.
And second, I want the people in the congregation to become emotionally connected to our youth through that sound. So they agreed, and every year over the course of the years, that's exactly what we've had. Okay. What's interesting is that sometimes one of the young people will have great difficulty getting a sound out.
Sure. Anyone could have a difficulty.
Exactly. And you can feel the sense of support that they're getting from the entire congregation. Okay. Usually if when he or she eventually gets it out, they burst in with applause. Okay. You did it. You made it happen. Okay. You it's in a sense it's a way of passing down that tradition of hearing the sound and making sure that it penetrates
Right.
deep into your soul.
And that story of how you wanted to strengthen the connection to of the youth of your congregation through their facilitation of that mitzvah for others to make the sound is speaks to the that symbol of the shofar as one that transcends both space and time and
Right.
connects us through that, and that is a beautiful example of how not only does the sound itself call us to have that kind of connection with one another, but how it fosters a connection for entire communities, and it strengthens the bonds among them, perhaps for those people who you expanded to have throughout the congregation were less engaged and or less known by people who attend more regularly. And that alone helped to build, I'm sure, their sense of Jewish identity and confidence in their place in Jewish spaces, which is, of course, one of the most important ways of ensuring a sense of continuity across generations.
Mhm.
So I love how you perfectly segued from the shofar as a symbol across space and continents, and not only that, but time too, and that it connects us in both fashions. And I kind of want to move to the idea of the obligations that the sound of the shofar calls us to do, and that is, as you pointed out just a few moments ago, that the sound is to rile us, to awaken us. Maimonides teaches that the sound is to say to us, "Wake up, you sleepers." So as Zionist rabbis and callers for moral clarity and action in the world, what does that mean for us today? Is that then, for instance, not just the Run for Our Lives events, which, as we know, occur throughout the world. There were places all over that hosted Run for Our Lives events for the hostages, um, but also in any other context. You mentioned the No Kings rally. Is that does that speak to the idea of waking up you sleepers? That is an ancient teaching that is still as relevant perhaps today than yeah, as it ever has been.
On October the 7th, there was a group of high school kids from the Reform congregation in Shoam, Israel. Shoam is about 10 minutes from Ben Gurion Airport.
Mhm.
Their rabbi was a rabbinic intern of mine. HUC has a program for Israeli rabbinic students to come to the United States and spend time interning in North American congregations, and we became very close, and so she had these kids. It was Sukkot for them, so she brought them to the United States, and our congregation hosted them. That October the 7th, those kids were coming to my home for Shabbat lunch. I woke up in the morning and I turned on the news, and of course, I heard the news of what was happening. And I said to my wife, "What are we going to do with these kids?" Um, Anyways, when they arrived, they were shell shocked.
Of course.
The rabbi, as soon as she heard the news, she told all of them to get on their cell phones, call their parents, and just to check in with them. And then she took all of their cell phones away from them.
Right. Right.
Um, and so they came, and we spent about 2 hours just debriefing. They insisted on having the conversation in English because they wanted to make sure that my wife and I would understand what it was that they were talking about. It was very beautiful, powerful, emotional, as you can well imagine. A couple of hours. When we finished, we shared in a prayer for the soldiers in the IDF and a prayer for Israel, and then we all sang Hatikva. I mean, it was an incredibly powerful Hatikva. Um, Towards the end of the conversation, one of the kids said to me, we're supposed to go to your congregation tonight for Simchat Torah and dance and sing with the Torahs. I don't think I could do that. And I said to him, you have to. I said, because our faith teaches us that despair is not in our vocabulary.
Right.
Okay, our vocabulary is only one of hope.
Precisely.
So they went. They did dance with the dance with the kids and the adults and everything, and uh, we helped to arrange for them to be able to get back home because their flights were canceled, and they were supposed to be flying out on Delta, and the only airlines was El Al. So we found the financial resources to make sure that they would be able to get home, and then I couldn't stand being here in the U.S. I had to find a way to get to Israel. So on November the 15th, I arrived. And the rabbi picked me up. And she said, we're making a stop before I take you to your hotel. Oh, really? Where? To the traffic circle in Shoam. And we got out of the car. We walked over to the traffic circle. There were a couple hundred people there. Somebody handed out the posters of all of the hostages. And we all stood at the traffic circle as the cars went around.
Wow.
Okay. Saw us with the posters beeping their horns. Okay. And by the way, that community has been at that traffic circle every day at 5 o'clock since the 8th or the 9th of October till today.
Wow.
Till today. They continue to do it. At the end of the trip, the rabbi said, I can't just take you to the airport. The parents of the kids want to meet you. So I've arranged for dinner. We went to one of their homes, and I got to meet all of the parents, and they thanked me, not me personally, but me on behalf of the congregation
Sure.
for this hosting their kids and the support, the emotional support, whatever. All of a sudden, I noticed the kids weren't in the room. I looked around. All of a sudden, the kids came in from the kitchen, okay, holding a tray with um, cupcakes and candles in each of the cupcakes. And they're singing Yom Holedet Sameach, happy birthday. I said, that's really lovely, but it's not my birthday. They said, we know. But you taught us that we're not allowed to despair, and even in the midst of despair, you have to have hope.
Wow. Talk about the intersection of peoplehood and responsibility there, and our specific responsibility to rejoice even in the face of what looks like and is complete despair otherwise.
Right.
That is, and that may sound like on its face like a contradiction, although that is the challenge and the obligation that we have that goes all the way back from Sinai, um, and that I think it's interesting that they chose to sing "Happy Birthday" as a sign of their rejoicing, and I think there's probably something much more to that also. That this is a time for to look toward the future, right? That to
That's
mark that
right.
here we are and there's more to come and we're not going anywhere.
Right.
And also that this is a moment a critical moment for the Jewish people that it marks something that we're moving into and forward with while still maintaining our values and what is important to us, and that is that sense of joy.
And for me, the interesting part in all this was everywhere I went on that trip, thank you for coming. We can't believe you're here. Okay. Now, in this regard, I'll make a negative comment. Okay.
Right.
My disappointment in the American Jewish community over the course of these 2 years is that we haven't publicly announced all of the missions going over to Israel in support of the families and support of the population. We haven't, in a sense, listed the following congregations are having missions to Israel this month. Okay.
Right.
So in significant numbers, right?
Right.
Um, you heard a thing called Terry's Angels?
I don't believe so.
Okay, so Terry's Angels um, is a program actually started by a group in Long Island, but two women from here in New Brunswick um, who actually are in Israel now for the third time since October the 7th, where they've gone over to do volunteer work. They heard about it and they brought it to our community. Okay. Terry's Angels is a program whereby, well, this is what I did. I was given a link. I hit the link. It took me to a site on Amazon from which I was able to pick out all kinds of things for soldiers
Hmm.
in the Israel Defense Forces. Okay, um, thermal underwear, gloves, even sheshbesh game. Okay,
Sure.
um, nothing of military value. Okay, and so I made my selection. Okay, I ordered it, and it was all sent to the home of one of these two women.
Hmm.
They put the stuff in duffel bags Took it to Israel, where the representatives of Terry's Angels met them at the airport, took the duffel bags from them, and then were to take them out to give to soldiers all across the country.
Wow.
Okay, so um, this, for me, this notion of Kol Yisrael Arevim Zelazeh, every Jew is connected one to the other, um, is both an incredible privilege, honor, and obligation.
Right.
Um, it's kind of a silly aside, but that October 7th, after we had lunch with the kids, I was trying to think, what can I do to get them in a different mood?
Hmm.
They had met us at, I have a summer home in Asbury Park, and they had met us there. And it so happened that day on the boardwalk in Asbury Park, they had a thing called the Zombie Walk.
Hmm.
Okay, it's pretty outrageous. People dress up as zombies. It's a kind of a Halloween-esque, but on steroids.
I
Okay,
can imagine.
so I said, let's take the kids down. Okay, and for about a half an hour while we were standing there watching the zombies walk by, these kids were laughing and hysterical, and they weren't thinking about anything except just pure rejoicing.
Right.
Okay. A few weeks ago, I went to the zombie walk, and I was standing like in the second row, but I wanted to take some pictures. And I said there was a woman and her husband and their daughter. And I said, "Would you mind if I just squeeze in here a little bit?" And she said, "No, it would be it's fine. It'd be our pleasure." I could tell she had an accent from somewhere in the former Soviet Union. A woman probably in her early 40s.
Hmm.
I said, "Where are you from?" Oh, she said, "Oh, I'm from Dagestan." I
Hmm.
said, "Really?
Wow.
What brought you here?" And she said, "My parents and I left um, in the 80s." And I said, "Were you part of the Soviet Jews who were brought out?" She said, "Yeah." She said, "Well,
Wow.
I marched for them um, in Washington D.C. and and we started chatting, and she told us how how grateful she was for what the American Jewish community had done, not only for her family personally, but for Jews from the former Soviet Union to be able to come out. Okay,
Right.
I'm not much of a crier, but I just wanted to cry. Okay?
An emotional moment and connection indeed, for sure.
Right. Okay. So, and in a sense, we did all those things and continue to do all those things because we keep hearing the sound of the shofar
Right.
every year. There's always a crisis, right?
Right.
And the sound of the shofar in that year brings us to, okay, what are you going to do about it?
Right.
Okay. It
Right.
never says that's somebody else's problem. Okay.
Precisely.
What are you going to do about it?
The recognition, as you alluded to and spoke about, recognition for the American Jewish communities that have made mission trips to Israel, um, is is an answer to that call. And unfortunately, I think just as you said, for that to have been highlighted in a more public fashion, would have perhaps elevated that sense of, or rather amplified that sound of the shofar for people. It is a touching story that you shared, especially about the zombie walk, and it also is, certainly I don't think by any means a coincidence that there was a I would say a liberated Jew who was
Yeah.
also there too,
Right.
enjoying the freedom and silliness there. And The fact that your efforts, from marching for that cause in the 80s, and directly, just by chance, meeting someone who benefited from the efforts of the American Jewish community to be openly Jewish and not to hold on to their identity in a place where it was completely attempted to be erased, um, is a very tangible and real example of how the Jewish people are, like you said, responsible for one another, and that extends from each generation to generation to this very day. And like you said, there's a crisis every year, and the question is, what are we going to do about it? And uh, that that takes the form of visiting Israel, showing up, and highlighting the hostages, and keeping that in our minds, and not letting go of it until it's fully come to a close and resolved. Um, so this we're really talking also now about a sense of Jewish unity, and how we are united, not only by the sound of the shofar, but by virtue of our connection to one another, both generationally and spiritually, and more. And I know that uh, we've talked about how the shofar has that impact, and hearing the sound of the shofar has that impact on us. So maybe could you like do a quick summary then as to how the shofar resonates with that mission, that mission of uniting the Jewish people.
So the shofar sound is a very unique one. Regardless of the size of the shofar, um, or the form, because there are some, there's some different kinds of shofars. Okay,
Right.
um, but in this regard, they all serve the same purpose, which is, no matter where you have been in this previous year, no matter your station in life, because there isn't a shofar for wealthy and another one for poor.
Right.
Our tradition calls upon us to hear that sound and wake us up to the values of our tradition, and then to act upon them.
Mm.
And it doesn't do it with it. These are not suggestions.
Right.
Okay, these are calls to action, because they lead to true repentance, which is to overcome the um, the actions that you didn't do and should have done, or the actions that you did and shouldn't have, um, and to reconnect with your place in the world.
Mm.
You know the story of Franz Rosenzweig.
Yes,
Okay,
sure.
on his way to become a Christian, and hears from a little steeple these strange sounds coming out. Now, we often think of it that they were the sounds of Nusach, of chanting. Maybe they were the sounds of the shofar.
Mm.
And he doesn't know why, but he stopped and went in. And it transformed his life.
Right.
Okay. I think that the purpose of the shofar every year is to be transformative.
Mm.
Okay. Stop, listen, and act. Okay. And and that's what um, renewal of life is all about.
That's beautiful, and I think one thing that comes to mind when you say that is, there's only one period at which we hear that sound, right? It's at the start of the year, and it's at Yom Kippur, and it's not like throughout the year we need to be that we are to be constantly reminded by hearing the sound again, right? But
Right.
rather it's serious. That is to say, uh, this is the time, and you are called to action starting again, and to renew that sense of mission within you, but also that this is to be expected. This is an obligation for you to fulfill um, from year to year, and not to allow yourself to forget just because you don't hear the sound in a few weeks from now. Um, and yeah, I'm sorry, were you going to say something?
So there's I'm not sure if it's an Isaac Bashevis Singer story or an I or that would be IB Singer or an IJ Singer story. Okay, IJ Singer I think was his brother who also wrote and wrote some pretty amazing stuff, some incredible novels. Anyways, the story is called. Um, the title is escaping me at the moment, but here's the essence of the story. This guy wakes up. It's Yom Kippur morning, and he wakes up and he says, "I'm not going. I'm just I'm tired of this. I'm not going. I'm just going to lay in bed." He's laying in bed and he lives near the shul. And now he hears that they're starting the Torah service. And he hears somebody say, Yamod, okay, to call up a guy for an aliyah.
Right.
And he hears his name called. And somebody in the back of the shul screams out, "Who mate? He's dead."
Mm.
Right? Because he wasn't there.
Right.
He's dead. Now the guy is in his bed and he starts screaming, okay, "I'm not dead. I'm alive." Okay. But he's not in the show. I won't tell you how the story ends, but imagine, okay, that in some real ways, the sound of the shofar, because not everybody gets called for an aliyah, but the
Right.
sound of the shofar is to wake up from being dead. Okay?
That's right. That's beautiful. And it does it cause that reaction in all of us that wait, no, I am here.
That's right.
And uh, don't let anyone else think otherwise, right?
That's right.
And the way that we do that is by acting on it.
Yeah. 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 It's a very powerful story.
Well, I can't wait to go and review it myself, and I appreciate the that you didn't give any spoilers. Um, but Rabbi Miller, I am so grateful for your time today and for all of your insights on not just the sound of the shofar and what it means for us today, but the real life examples of how it is an enduring symbol for the Jewish people. Wherever we are, whenever we are, and will continue to be that as long as we sound it, and as long as we are there to hear it. Which will each time we hear it, it'll call us to continue that work. So I thank you again, Rabbi Miller, and I really appreciate all your time and your wisdom today.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to share with you and to enter into dialogue. I can't think of a better way to have chavruta.
Precisely, yes. And I learned so much just from this conversation, and I hope everyone who has the opportunity to listen surely will too. Thank you
Thank you.
again.